Yes. Hey guys, I'm Ty with Muscle Wiki. This is our friend Andrea, personal trainer extraordinaire. We're going to be taking you through the deadlift today, both the conventional and the sumo. And speaking of that, how do you know whether or not you should pull conventional or sumo? Some people totally base this on how they feel, what feels right or natural. That's fine as well, but there is a way that you can tell based on your limb lengths. So a person with a shorter torso and longer legs, like myself, usually functions a little bit better with a wider stance, either a sumo or the Cohen deadlift, which we'll come to. And a person like Andrea, who has a little bit longer legs, shorter legs and a longer torso, usually functions a little bit better with conventional. So look at this, face this way. So Andrea is a couple inches taller than me, maybe like 2.5 inches taller than me. And our hips are at the same level, which of course I'm shorter than her, so my hips should be lower down, but that's not the case, again, because I have a shorter torso and longer legs. So that's just an example of different limb lengths. So again, you should base your sumo or conventional decision on that. I wanted to give you a little more detail on knowing whether or not you should do sumo or conventional, because there's actually a really great study where they measured limb lengths and kind of extrapolated the information from there to tell a person whether or not they should do sumo or conventional. So you're going to need a tape measure for this. So you'll measure the distance from your hip to the floor. That'll be your leg length, and then you're going to measure from your shoulder to the tip of your finger. That'll be your arm length. And then from the top of your head to your hip, and that'll be your torso length. Divide each of those numbers by your total height in inches, and then we will use this table here in order to dictate whether or not you have a longer femur versus torso or vice versa. And then from there, we'll use this table to tell you sumo or conventional. This table's great because it's very simple, quick, and easy to understand. Also, one last note, don't let anybody on Instagram shame you for doing a sumo deadlift. Don't let them do it. Biomechanically speaking, conventional deadlift and sumo deadlift are just as difficult as one another. So ignore that. So how do you know where your stance should be, and then also your grip? So we got a few options with both. Let's talk about stance first. So if you're a conventional puller like Andrea, and we'll mostly be going over the conventional deadlift using her as an example, you can do a very simple thing, which is a light hop, and your feet will kind of naturally fall into the right position. You could do this 2 or 3 times to kind of see what happens, and from there, and from there, you keep that stance width, and then you just step up to the bar. All right, and then next thing is, again, grip. So you're gonna hinge forward, push your hips straight back, make sure you're always keeping a flat back, and you want a double overhand grip for as much as you can stand it. Now, what I mean by that is when the weights get too heavy, a double overhand grip, you're just not going to be able to hold on to the bar at a certain point. So at that point, you would want to switch to a mixed grip, where you point one hand underneath and the other hand is over. This will keep the bar from rolling out of your hands because you have this hand keeping the bar from rolling. I suggest you reserve this grip for your heavier sets. There is some danger with this grip. Because you have an underhand grip, a lot of stress goes onto that bicep, and I have seen several videos, I haven't seen it personally, of a person tearing their bicep on this underhand side. So be careful. Go ahead and rest. Yeah. Our model is resting right now, so I'm gonna show you one more grip. She's just fine, I promise. I'm gonna show you one more grip, which is the hook grip. So I'm gonna have you come and get a close up on this one. So you want to curl your thumb underneath and then wrap your fingers around your thumb. Now, this grip hurts like hell. It pulls on this thumb joint here. And so only reserve this for when you absolutely cannot hang on to the bar any longer. So start double overhand grip. Once the weights get too heavy, switch to mixed grip. And if you're still struggling to hold on to the bar, try out a hook grip. But still, again, be careful. It hurts like hell, so reserve it for when absolutely necessary. Okay, since I'm the sumo puller, I'm gonna show you a little bit about the sumo stance. Now, some people like to go as wide as they possibly can, which is, again, when you've got longer legs based on your torso to femur length ratio. This is okay. Other sumo pullers like myself, I always prefer a bit of a hybrid stance, which is a little bit closer, so I can get my quads into the movement a little bit more, turn it into a squat. When you are doing a conventional or sumo deadlift, essentially your number one goal is getting the weight from point A to point B safely. And so squatting, quote unquote, the weight up is not necessarily a bad thing. So again, it's kind of based on preference. If you're a sumo puller or you're gonna pull sumo, experiment out wide and work your way in until you find what feels really comfortable for you. So now that we've gone through stance, grip, all that, now it's finally time to initiate the deadlift. So what you're gonna do once you're in position is you wanna sit back and use the barbell as a bit of a counterweight. You wanna sit all the way back as far as you can, and then imagine you're pushing the floor away from yourself instead of pulling off the floor. So I'm gonna have you go ahead and initiate your first rep and push the floor away from you. And you're going to a direct stand. Now we don't wanna push the hips all the way through. That's a hyperextended spine. At the top, you just wanna go to a stand. Now we're gonna go into the eccentric, hips back. Plates all the way back on the floor. And we pull again. Nice flat back. Now make sure your head is following your body. We don't want to look down or up. We want to keep a neutral head because your spine reaches all the way into the back of your skull. So you want to make sure you're not flexing or extending your cervical spine as well. Okay, back to the floor. That's 2, and I'm going to have you just knock out a few more reps. Let's do 4 more. That's 3. I hit 3 more. Perfect. Sit back, make sure you're driving through those heels. Your toes should be able to pop up off the floor. We want the heels in contact with the ground. That's where you're putting all your strength into. How many is that so far? We always lose count. Let's do it, just 1 more. Back to the floor, pack the shoulders down, sit back and pull. Yep, and then back to the floor. Let me give you a little more details on the sumo pull. That's how I always pulled when I was powerlifting. So again, I prefer a slightly more narrow stance than some other sumo pullers. This is about how wide I ever went. You take your grip, and then you wanna, again, use that bar as a counterweight to sit all the way back and try to get your shins as vertical as you can. Next thing is pulling the slack out of the bar. So pulling the slack out of the bar basically means you're gonna pull before you actually initiate the rep. So again, when you sit back, you should be generating so much tension. You see the plates popping up off the floor very slightly. That's pulling the slack out of the bar. Now, when you have enough weight on the bar, of course, you're not gonna be able to pull the plates up off the ground. Most of the time, the bar is just gonna bend very slightly. Or again, you just create a little more tension through the body. Just like we talked about with the squat, you want to generate as much tension through your body as you possibly can. The more torque you generate at your joints, the more tension you generate, the more weight you'll be able to pull. So from that point, pull the slack out of the bar, and then we initiate the rep by spreading the floor. So you can see I'm almost rolling outward on my shoes because I'm, again, splitting the floor in half. When you're a conventional puller, you want to push the floor away from you. When you're a sumo puller, you want to spread the floor. Point blank, period. The same rule applies at the top of the rep. You don't want to shoot your hips all the way through. That's a hyperextended spine. You just want to go to a stand and then back down. Spread the knees. Okay? That's a sumo and cut.
Couple more details for you. First, where to line up the bar when you are preparing to pull from the floor. So you want it just over your midfoot. So slightly away from your shins, but relatively close. And then also how to use a belt. So you should have enough room in your belt for you to be able to slide your hand or fingers into the belt. There should be enough space there. And then you want to fill up that remaining space with air. Breathe in deeply and then push your abdomen out against the belt. Hold that while you're performing the rep and then exhale at the end of the rep. Now we're on to our do nots. Do not number 1 by a country mile is rounding your back. This puts all the tension on your lumbar spine and will lead to an injury eventually. So make sure you're very careful, flat back all the time. One thing that can cause you to round your back quite a bit is having the bar too far away from you. So if the bar is up by your toes or even further away, like in this clip, that can lead to back rounding. And third, hyperextending your back. So this is just as dangerous as rounding your back. Hyperextension of the spine and pushing your hips all the way through can be just as dangerous as the inverse, rounding. So when you get to the top of the lift, as I said before, just make sure you go to a straight up stand. And that is it for the deadlift. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you'd like to hear from us next, and be safe out there. Take care.